you for joining us. Welcome to the seminar today by Dr. Haiyun Zhang. Two sides of motivational coin, self-motivation versus apathy. 唤醒内驱力的积极进取与失去内驱力的消极抑郁，一枚硬币的两面。Today's lecture presentation will be in English and Mandarin, but the PowerPoint will mostly be in English. Dr. Haiyun Zhang will talk for 1.5 hours and then leave plenty of time for Q&A. 欢迎来到张海云博士的讲座。今天的讲座，张博士会用中英文、图片以英文为主。他的演讲大约1个半小时，之后会给大家充足的时间提问。Dr. Haiyun Zhang grew up in a family of scientists and educators. She went to one of the best high schools in Shanghai, where she received first-class prize in national mathematics competition and second-class prize for national physics competition. In 1986, she received full scores for AHSME, the predecessor of AMC-12, and AMY. Because of her academic track record and competition achievements, she was able to skip the college entrance exam to get into the physics department of Peking University. After 3 years of studies, she went to Caltech for graduate school and later received her PhD in physics and neurobiology there. She later worked as an healthcare actuary for many years and passed the notoriously difficult sets of actuarial exams to achieve the Fellow of Society of Actuaries designation. Dr. Haiyun has had many years of teaching experience in STEM. In 2014, she founded Inspire School to enhance the school curriculum, develop children's quantitative and logical skills, and encourage the love of math and science. She strives to spark imagination and motivation, introduce problem solving and logical thinking in all fields of studies. Haiyun is also a history buff, deeply touched by arts, music, and the human experiences. For her, scientific discovery and technology advancement is the driving force of history, like the rational yang. Arts, music, and stories are what enrich us, like the emotional yin. Children represent innocence, kindness, honesty, just like the future. Today, we will focus her speech on the physical and mental development of children. Whole person education. She will discuss children's development path based on her own experience with children. She will talk for about 1.5 hours and leave plenty of time for Q&A. 现在我用中文介绍一下。张海云博士是硅谷著名的数学物理教师和学者。他本人出身数学世家，毕业于上海最好的中学之一上海中学。他因为全国数学竞赛1等奖和全国物理竞赛2等奖而保送北京大学物理系学习，并且在系里保持第一。他在中学期间还参加过美国的 AMY 和 AHSME 后来的 AMC-12 数学竞赛，并且取得满分。他离开北大以后，来到美国加州理工学院 Caltech， 获得物理学和神经生物学博士学位。他做过多年的家庭主妇，其中在之后的精算师生涯里拿到了精算师的最高级别资格证书。多年来，他亲身经历加州12年初等数学教育的过程，尤其意识到 STEM 数学、科学、技术 对社会生产力的重要贡献，使他在2014年辞去优渥的精算师职位，开创了数学学校 Inspire School， 来填补学校数学的不足，使得美国这一代的学生能打好扎实的基础，成为将来社会有能力、有内涵的中坚力量。他尤其注重激发孩子的兴趣，让每个孩子在合适的时间学到合适的课程，培养孩子的逻辑能力、表达能力和解决问题能力。他兴趣广泛，既喜爱科学方面的创造力，也有很强的人文关怀。历史和科技给他理性的思考，艺术与少年儿童占据了他的心灵。天真、健全、美好、清澈、希望和未来，孩子在他眼里是这些词最完美的代表。他非常关心孩子们的身心健康和全人教育，高度关注青少年心理健康和抑郁症话题。今天主题是讨论，虽然孩子们不同性格，造成对外界同一事物的不同反应，在不同领域上也有不同的天赋，然而共性昭然，都有好奇心、好胜心及对快乐的追求。如何利用孩子的自身条件，激发其对知识的追求，对不足的容忍，对困难的锲而不舍，自然而然地使其达到积极进取的成熟，是做家长和老师追求的目标。而反之，如果不遵循自然的发展，那么优秀的天赋、美好的愿望都不能够阻止越来越消极的结果，甚至造成长久的负面影响。好，现在我们欢迎张博士。
非常谢谢 Elaine 介绍了这么多然后呢我今天呢也是在做一个自己的内驱力的一个实验啊，就是说我想用中文和英文两种语言来讲。So today I'm gonna actually try to speak in both Chinese and English back and forth. I don't know if it will work well, but I'm hoping that it might. So for every slide, most of the slides, it will be English with some Chinese highlights. So I'll speak in English ones and then Chinese ones and so on and so forth, okay? So I first of all want to appreciate your patience and your enthusiasm to come on a Saturday or Sunday, depending on where you are in the world. So today my topic is on the self-motivation versus apathy. Elaine actually was wondering if that's a word. I looked it up also. And when I was trying to find the title for my lecture, we all know how we are motivated when we say, I have the motivated, I'm enthusiastic to do something. But not having that motivation is actually described as apathy. So we all have that experience also. So as a teacher, also as a mother of three, as a child, I was a child for many years. I just want to give you some of my reflections as an educator. 所以就是今天的题目是唤醒内驱力的积极进取和失去内驱力的消极抑郁，就像一枚硬币的两面哈，每一个人都有不同的方面，所以我们呢就这次争取用英文讲一遍一个这个 slide， 然后用中文再讲一遍，我也没试过，所以希望大家多包涵，如果中间有困难的话，好不好？下一个 slide 呢，就是说对我来说，我今天的定位应该是一个老师，同时也是一个家长那么我们今天 focus on 的那个我们今天想集中精力考虑的应该还是说是孩子，所以我们的目的是做教育和做孩子的教育这是我今天的那个思考的主要的方面。那么一开始有一张大家都知道图This slide says nobody started out knowing how to be a parent. So I've used this slide many times. Some of you may have seen it because it really reflects the many of us when we have difficulty in becoming a parent, and then when we suddenly became one, it seems so overwhelming, so surprising, and so we don't know what to do. So I use this cartoon called As you can see, this guy, he's trying to swim, learning how to swim because he has a book that's called Teaching You to Swim. So basically, he actually started swimming without realizing how to do it. That's often the case for most of our parents. In Chinese, 就是说这个 slide 就是说，那我们经常是开始做家长了以后，突然一下发觉我们有很多事情我们都不懂，所以呢，就好像这个人在游泳，但是他带着一本游泳指南在开始游泳，所以你可以想象我们有多手忙脚乱。So you can see I can even make him shake. Look, so he's trying to shake in his swimming practice. So today's focus is education, like I said, children's education, 就是儿童的教育或者孩子的教育。那么I'm going to talk about 5W. When we interview people or when we talk about something, we often use the 5W, right? What are the 5Ws? Who? So who will we be educating, and who will actually educate them? Those are two aspects that I'll talk about. Why? Most of you think that you know absolutely why we want to educate them, but I still want to discuss with you. And what? When and where, and then how. So, 就是我们在谈教育的时候，我们有5个，一般来说我们要问嘛，是谁被教育呢？然后又谁去做这个教育，对不对？那么其实很明显，就是现在我们是 focus 上孩子。我一般现在在讨论18岁以下的孩子，或者25岁以下的孩子 ，roughly。Why？ 为什么很多人觉得就是 obvious 的？他们要去学校不就是受教育吗？也许我们还可以再讨论讨论。What 就是要教他们什么呢？ And when 就是在哪里啊？在什么时候和在哪里，我把它并在一起了。最后就是 how， 所以这个是我们今天要谈论的主要的一些内容。So we established that we're going to educate children. So what are they like? I usually like to have a interactive session when I, give a on-site speech. So we can do that too today. 就是说, I welcome your input in the chat. What do you think children are like? 就是我平常去做报告的时候，我经常喜欢让大家互动哈，就是你们觉得小孩子是什么样子的？ What do you think children are? One person said video game. That defines children. Another person said wild card. The third person said each child is different. And I love this philosophical musing that says children are like a pond of pure water. Yeah, I actually don't have to repeat them because you can all see it, right, from your chat. Yeah, I love those musings. So let's take a look at what I think they are and see if you agree. One is the children actually crave social interaction. We are a social animal through and through. So in the previous slides, you can see that this is a bunch of kids playing. One of them is my daughter. And so they definitely crave social interaction, just like adults. The second is the younger they are, the more they need immediate attention. The third is they are often self-centered. The younger they are, the more self-centered they are. Have you seen a little baby? I think before 6 months, they don't even realize if they look in the mirror, that's themselves. They only realize their own feelings or their own sensation. Their temperaments definitely differ. Like one of the attendants said, that every child is different. And their abilities also differ. So there's a lot of multi-intelligence theory about children's different aspects of their abilities as they grow older, and it still reflects in every one of us. They also have natural compassion, but only for the people nearby. If you have ever been a mother or a father, or if you've ever observed children, you'll see when they are very, very little and somebody's hurt or something is, some other kids are crying, they often are immediately affected by that, and they will cry or they will try to comfort that. And they are very curious, inquisitive. That's really both of the last two. The ability to construct and deduct are really unique. The last one, I would say, they are really unique to Homo sapiens, which is us. Most other animals have probably the above 7, but not the last one, the ability to construct and abstract concepts and deduct. 所以我刚才用英文讲了一遍，就是小朋友他其实他是社会性的，对吧？他非常喜欢跟别的小朋友玩，跟人玩。所以为什么有很多狼孩啊，或者有很多关在一个小房间里小朋友有很多的困难，但他们也是马上就需要你来照顾他的。他小孩子越小，他越能一哭就希望所有的人都来给他一个注意。他们也是非常自我为中心的，越小呢，他们也是越容易自我为中心，因为他还没有学会怎么样对外界的反应，他们性格和他们的能力都不同，一直到长大了也还一样。他们有非常自然的一种情感和爱心，但是主要是对他周围的人，就是对于远处的人，他其实是没有概念的。他也很好奇，我想起我有一次在就是看见企鹅的时候，那些小的企鹅特别喜欢来跟我们玩，但是大企鹅就已经非常就是警醒了。其实跟小孩子和大人也有一定的关系。那最后呢，就是他们的就是抽象思维和逻辑推导的能力。这个最后一点的确是应该说是人类，所以我们的智人特有的。所以我们只有知道我们要教育的对象是什么，我们才能真正的好的教育。So I will continue with the history of the tool person or the Homo sapiens. We sometimes call them Homo habilis, meaning that we, as the top predator in the world, are really very, very good at making tools. And that's probably how we got to the top predator. So you can see the history of our life. Let me see if I can make a laser pointer. Do you guys see it? Yeah. So you can see how they crawl. And then they started to invent spearheads and bow and arrow. And this is probably already close to the agricultural age. And then we started to have books, radio, and all kinds of information that we're able to absorb and we're able to accumulate through the years. Finally, doesn't this just look like our Zoom? This picture was, I was preparing for this lecture about 3 years ago. So we didn't know Zoom would be so prevailing. 这个呢，就是讲那个作为一个人的智人，我们就是我们现在的人类啊，其实也有人叫他工具人，因为工具嘛，其实是我们能够就是在世界上做那个最老大的那个办法，所以我们就发明了，一开始是像锤子啊，一开始像spearhead 就是那个箭头啊，然后我们就能发明弓箭呢，然后我们有了书，我们就开始积累知识，我们就可以一代一代的往下传播，然后最后呢，到现在我就说是不是像我们的 Zoom meeting 呢？所以这个3-5年以前的这个对人的一个解释就已经很像我们现在的行为了。So what does human need? There was a lot of theory. One of the most popular and in psychology is probably Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So I don't need to go into detail because you probably have seen it before. Most of it has to do with satisfying our physical needs first, and then satisfying our more emotional and metaphysical needs, so more abstract needs. So really, where is education at? What do you think? On the very bottom to satisfy our physical needs or safety or the belonging or esteem or self-realization? Where do you think education would be? You guys are welcome to put in your opinion. Top? Yeah? To put yourself as in belonging? Anybody else? It actually, if you look at animals, the education in the animals or some kind of knowledge passed down really probably even start at the most basic level with safety. They have to teach their kids to build a nest. They have to teach them how to do a lot of things. So I think it actually is throughout the pyramids. Probably the very bottom is less, but it reflects all the stages in the pyramid. So you can see it's quite important. 那马斯洛的那个心理金字塔大家都看见过，就是说教育其实影响这个我们人的每一个层次，甚至包括就是倒数第二都是，比如说我们如何保证我们自己的安全呐，我们如何找到工作啊，如何找到家庭啊，都在教育里有反映。所以我想接下来再仔细的讲一下，就是我们如何找些什么东西来教他们。So why do we need to be educated? So I want to answer the question why, right? So how many of you have seen Fred and Wilma in the Flintstones? When I came to the States in the 90s, it was on TV. Have you seen that cartoon? 你有没有看过那个 Flintstones? 我不知道在中国有没有。So it's about a couple. They are in the caves. 就是这一对Fred and Wilma 吧，他们是在山洞里的，就相当于我们现在拍那个原始人的故事。当然这是一个非常好玩的，就是无厘头的那种那个电视哈。So I am making it a joke also. So they compare Wilma and Fred. Wilma has very delicate feature, very high forehead and big head because she has a lot of capacity for her brain, and she has very graceful frames, meaning she's very evolved. And Fred, on the other hand, he seems to be quite we don't say a brute, but he seems to be quite not evolved, right? So his widest part is below his ear. He has a robust figure. 也就是说，这两个男女虽然是一对夫妻哈，笑话里就是说他们一个呢好像是非常非常进化了的智人，因为他好像脑袋里脑容量特别大。那 Fred 呢就好像脑容量挺小的，但是呢身体很壮，所以呢他是 Homo erectus。Homo erectus of course are the Peking man or many other they were considered our cousins。就是说直立人被认为是北京猿人是直立人，就不一定是现代智人的祖先，可能是我们以前的亲戚，或者我们以前的远古的亲戚，然后现在就已经灭绝了。所以就开玩笑就说这个男的和女的之间有这么一个区别，实际上我拿它来就是要反映我们为什么要教育。为什么要教育啊？其实就是要从 Fred 教育到 Wilma So to change people, really to improve them from their natural state to some educated state. And the second is to develop an independent, self-reliant, collaborative human being. So I want to emphasize the three aspects. We will emphasize it later. Right now, independent means I want you to think about what it means. And self-reliant and collaborative. 所以教育的话其实就是有点像把一个人从一个蒙昧的状态，或者他生出来的一个自然的状态，教育到一个我们所谓说的有教育的有教养的状态。那包括什么呢？我自己总结的哈，我想很多教育家也在思考到底我们为什么要教育，就要把一个人教育成他能自立，能够自主，第三个是还愿意和人合作的人。所以这就反映了人的社会性嘛，第三点啊。所以 how do we tell if we're successful in education or not？ 我们怎么判断就是我们成功了呢？就是做到这一点了呢？这个是我最近在一个非常著名的心理学家的讲座里听见的。他说世界卫生组织虽然最近有很多讨论，但是世界卫生组织毕竟是一个非常对健康非常重视的组织。他说是一个健康的成人，它是有哪些？你们看这里面的内容，它需要有 他能够自食其力，第一个。第二个很有意思，他有跟别人的友情，而且这个友情是我喜欢他，他也喜欢我的友情，而且也不是说我去付钱然后让人家来陪伴我的友情。第三是他要么曾经自己住过，要么以前曾经住过，现在可能不了没有major 的 mental illness， 没有主要的精神疾病，其实也应该包括生理的疾病了，其实是一样的。最后是他自己报告他需要高兴和他觉得他自己还不错。So this is a psychologist talk that I heard a few days ago. I just put it in to let us assess what is a healthy, both physically and mentally healthy adult. So it actually reflects what I said about the self-reliance, as well as independent in their living, as well as in their management of their finance. And they also need one reciprocal friendship. That means you need to have a friend who you likes and want to be with you, and they like you too. So that's actually quite challenging. And you have no depression or major mental illness, as well as physical illness. And then the last one is your self-reporting to be happy and your fairly well-being. So I think that's a very interesting criteria for us to consider when we consider what we are trying to achieve so that in education. So what do we teach? So we did the why. So now we want to figure out what. What can we do to teach kids to be this independent, self-reliant, and collaborative person, right? What quality differentiates the educated versus the uneducated? So I thought of three things, and a lot of educators probably have similar ideas. For me, these three things are equally important. One is the knowledge. So I'm talking about individual knowledge, right? How much I know, emotional maturity, and the value system. 所以我们刚才已经解释了为什么要教育，因为不然的话你就处在那个 fret 的状态。那么我们怎么教什么样的东西给孩子，他才能变成自主、自立和有合作精神的人呢？所以我觉得要区分一个受过教育的和没有受过教育的，有三个大的方面，一个是知识，一个呢是情感的成熟，还有一个是他的价值观。所以我们就接下来就具体的讲一下这三个方面。So in terms of knowledge, I'm not talking really about the specific subjects because they're all part of one thing. I just want to add a few things that I find important. You want to change the kids from ignorance to have a lot of knowledge. You also want to teach them from don't know how to learn to gain the ability to acquire knowledge. They also need to be able to judge things objectively instead of subjectively after they learn a lot of knowledge. And they are able to tell truth from fiction, from opinion in their educated states. When they're uneducated, they're more likely to be misinformed. And they have no understanding of causality if they're not educated. So logical deduction is important too. 就是在知识方面，我并不是说学科语文、数学、物理、化学，但是我觉得每一个知识它都有一些内容，也就是说共性，就是它要首先它的知识的体系它需要开始建立。第二个，他如果自己不会学习的话，老师要教会他们如何去掌握更多的知识。他在主观的一些判断要变成能够客观的判断事情，包括能够区分什么是事实，什么是意见，或者什么是臆造出来的东西，这个也是非常重要的。然后最后一个就是他不会逻辑的推导，那教育以后他需要学会逻辑的推导。So this is all about knowledge， 这是第一方面。第二方面呢，就是要讲一下 the essence of knowledge。现在我就是想讲那个知识的最核心的部分。最核心的部分其实是 the quest of asking why. So the essence of knowledge, in my mind, is really the why. So we are always in the quest of asking why. If you think about human history, throughout the history. So in the old days, it was called philosophy. In the ancient Greek time as well as Confucius time. There happened to be both around 2,500 years ago. And what is modern day philosophy? Well, you still have philosophy department at Stanford or many university. You have philosophy books, right? But what do you think really modern philosophy or modern quest of asking why is? What tool can we use to ask the question of why and receive the answer? It's actually through science. Physics is to find why in natural world, and biology is to find why in the animal living kingdom, not animal living kingdom. 所以我想讲的就是知识的最核心的地方，其实在整个人类寻找知识的过程当中，就算过去的5000年、10000年，其实是寻找为什么的一个旅途 quest， 就好像你一直在寻找很困难的一件事情。那在2500年以前，当然就是我们叫它哲学，比如说尤其是Socrates、Plato or Aristotle， 对吧？就是亚里士多德啊，那个苏格拉底等等。那你从中国的角度呢，就是诸子百家。所以碰巧那个时候人类都处于一种集中起来住在同一个农业的集中体的一个时候，所以他们就开始问这个为什么。然后现代的为什么呢？其实是需要用科学的方式才能来达到那个答案，就是为什么。物理呢就帮你格物致理，所以我们叫物理嘛。生物呢就来帮助你了解生命的起源和生物之间的关系。我们现在的这个大家都非常关注的新冠病毒也是一样。那只有通科学的方式才能了解 why it's formed like that, why it spread, why the COVID-19 is the way it is. And finally, my favorite is math, is the quantitative tool and framework for the quest. So that's why I put the technology, I put the different aspect of science in this arrow, as well as in terms of finally in engineering technology, they are all derived from this quest of why. 所以我最后就是说，数学当然是这一切寻找为什么的那个定量的工具和他们的框架。所以呢，数学它可以给物理啊、生物啊各种各样的科学和我们所有的技术得到它的基础。那这个实际上是多年以来的几千几万年以来的过程。然后呢，还有就是我们如何来交流，用不同的语言来交流。So I'm going to talk about 3 languages to communicate. I think I talked about this last time in my lecture in math. So many of you already know, right? Should I test you or should I just tell you the answer? I wish I had, prizes for you guys, but I don't. What do you think are the 3 languages? I should quit this because many people doesn't know yet. 就是哪3种语言是这个现代社会最需要的呢？ Anybody? Please tell us the answers. That is called, I want to stimulate your self-motivation to find the answers. So let's just do the experiment with self. Okay, one person says English. Anything else? Body language, that's very interesting. And a lot of people would put music. Math. I love it that you guys put love in there too. Love is often expressed with what language? Often natural language, because when we express love, we want actually another human being to hear it. Maybe next time we can express 2 other things, but we'll see. 所以第一个是the first one is natural language. Usually I say it's for interpersonal communication. Many of you talk about English, but English is just one kind of natural language. The second one is, some of you said, is the mathematical language for a more abstract and precise description of the world. So algebra is becoming this language important enough that if you don't know it, I would usually call you semi-illiterate, just like in the 100 years ago that you don't know how to read. And then for the last 30 years, programming language is becoming a more and more important language because we have more and more machines that we can use to get people to get machine to do things, right? So we have more and more machines that can help people do things. 所以我就把这个3种语言呢分成3类啊，还有人说这个body language 啊 music 啊 and drawing 啊you can think about how they're related to these 3 languages. Yeah, oftentimes music and drawing are part of helping the natural language because they're still people-to-people communication. In fact, we can discuss how much information is included in the drawing, music versus natural language. It's a very interesting topic. With algebra, I explained in computer language. So I think that you need both written and oral communication for all of them. Oral just meant you can, speak it, and if you need it to speak to each other. So this is a Euler, according to him, the sort of idea of a knowledge, not one as an individual, second as a collective human knowledge. Did I speak enough Chinese in the previous slide? It's okay. So Euler said, your knowledge is like a circle. Inside the circle is what you know. Outside is what you don't know, right? So I said it's known and unknown, known and unknown. The circumference of the circle is how much you know that you don't know. So you can see the more knowledge I have, the more I actually realize I don't know. 所以欧勒是18世纪的一个著名的 Swiss 和 Russia 的一个数学家，他写了好多书，所以呢总结了前人的很多的数学的经验。那么他说你的知识啊就像一个大圆或者小圆，你圆里面是你知道的东西，圆外面是你不知道，但是圆的周边是你觉得你不知道的。所以你可以知道你学的越多，你就意识到你有更多的东西不知道，因为它就有更多的周长来接触到周围的未知。那我觉得这个既能够表现一个个人的知识的一个框架，也能表现一个人类的知识的框架，因为人类也是这样的，对不对？ So I'm going to describe now the human collective knowledge for the last 100,000 years, right? Well, really, it's 1.4 million, but we'll look at the knowledge where we have any passed downs, we have any history of it, maybe 5,000 years. So in the very, very beginning, it may be this little star. We know how to light fire, we know how to make wheels, things like that, very basic things. And then this is Galileo. So he really led us to know how the earth is going around the sun, and the astronomy knowledge. That's based on Greek also. And Newton, of course. So I did the circle sort of based on how far they are from current. The more current they are, the more close to they're to the edge. So this is Darwin. They're giving us the evolutionary theory. And Einstein, of course, made a lot of contribution to physics. And then the recent, other people make many incremental improvements of knowledge accumulation. And this little picture is Steve Hawking and one of my professors, Kip Thorne, who Kip Thorne received his Nobel Prize, 5 years ago for gravitational waves. So you might have seen the movie Interstellar. It was written by him. And then this is the little star that you and I may have made in the little accumulation of human knowledge， 就是说这个就是一个人类的整个的知识的积累。比如说最早就是钻木取火啊，或者怎么做那个石头，你可以割那个羊皮啊。然后呢，到伽利略，那已经是基于希腊的基础上来做很多数学和物理，来告诉我们地球是绕太阳转的。牛顿呢发明了微积分，也做了万有引力定律。那达尔文呢，当然对生物的进化有就是最重要的贡献。然后爱因斯坦也给我们很多的物理上的进步，像这个是 Stephen Hawking 和我的以前的老师 Kip Thorne， 就是在引力波上得了诺贝尔奖。最近那个电影 Interstellar 也是他写的。那我们每个人其实就是作为一个个人对整个人类的知识的贡献，也是可以看到他把这个圆一点点变大。而且我一直要强调人类的社会性，也就是说我们大家正因为我们有传播知识的方式，所以我们能够你知道的东西我们后代也能知道，不然的话就每一代就要自己开始重新发明，那肯定到不了我们现在这样子。 Okay, so this was all the knowledge part. Now we come to the emotional part, what I call emotional maturity. I think that without the education, we tend to be having more fear of things we don't know. There was a famous master class. I don't know if you guys watch YouTube. They are giving me all these ads called master class. One of the astronauts, he was talking about his preparation for a mission into space. He says that when we want to reduce risks, we can never cross our finger. Cross our finger, it meant in Christian's term, you just pray, right? You just hope that it's not going to happen. He says we never can use that method to mitigate our risks. The only thing that can help us is knowledge, which is to overcome our fear, we have to have knowledge so that we can go from being afraid to have courage. The next part is lacking humor to a sense of humor. I don't know about you, but when I learn language, really you learn more, when you delve deeper into the language, you gain a better sense of humor. And it turns people from being rigid to being tolerant, that they have more acceptance of others. From rudeness to courteousness, it's often said to be, that means that you have manner, you're educated because you're more courteous. And also it turns people who tend to avoid difficulty to maybe having the ability to overcome difficulties, or what we call grit. And the last one is the self-image, what you see yourself. This is more like an emotional seeing yourself, like what kind of person am I? Having more education makes you be able to see yourself in a more realistic light. 就是在情感的这个成熟度上，我自己的总结，它有很多的从没有勇气到有勇气，从没有什么幽默感到语言上的高等的能力，就是有幽默感嘛。而且从比较非黑即白的思想到比较容易宽容，有各种各样的对大家的接受度。还有呢，就是所谓的有教养，就是有礼貌。这个经常我们作为是有教育的一个表现，其实也是情感上成熟的一部分。还有就是从他克服困难的害怕到他比较勇于克服困难。还有就是对他自己的一个判断，就是他是不是能够判断自己到底是什么样的人，这也是需要教育的。所以呢，这个是在情感的成熟度上，我们很多人可能都会还有别的想法，所以我欢迎你们等会儿可以讨论。So the third is value system. So in terms of value system, I summarized a few things. One is from being conservative to more forward-looking, because they are able to learn or have a vision of the future. They often turn from being opportunistic to being educated to have integrity. It's actually difficult and takes courage to have integrity. And from being dishonest or prone to, hiding things to being honest, because It also takes courage and knowledge, to be honest. It turns people from self-centered and inward focused to being collaborative, like what I said. It also turns people from having no self-reflection to having introspection. It's related to the self-image, but self-image may be more of the emotional side. This is more of a rational side. The final aspect is, of course, having compassion and empathy for people and for other things. 从这个价值观的角度，我列了一些，很多人可能觉得，这些事情是，就是不用教的，但实际上我要强调的就是所有的这些内容，如果不通过教育，其实一个自然的人，天生的人是达不到的。也就是说，从很保守看不到未来，到对未来有一定的判断，从一个投机的人到一个正直的和诚实的人，其实这是需要勇气和知识的。还有就是从他对自己的只对自己而关心，而能够对别人有很多的同理心啊，有很多的关爱然后还有就是对自己的自省，其实这都是可以学的。所以我个人认为，就是教育远远不只是教育知识，而这些都是在每一个教育里潜移默化得到的。So we're done with the what in a very, very big general way. Now we want to look at who can influence the kid. What do you guys think? Who can influence kids? A lot of people say parents. Parents, teachers, friends. I think you should come and do the lecture for me now for this part. Everybody the kids encounter, yeah. Peers, yeah. So I pretty much covered it all, right? Look at that. Family, school, which is institutions where we are at, peers, and society. I just lump everything else into society. YouTubers, exactly. That's probably society also. So as a math teacher, I just kind of wrote the equation. Our nurture, which is who nurtured us, right? Nature means, my parents gave birth to me and the physical and the chemical surroundings. But nurture means that whatever I receive ever since I'm born. So I just wrote family is 8%, school is B, peer is C%, and society is D%. And I add everything up, that would be amount of nurturing I get, right? 所以我们就是像刚才很多人回答的哈，有多少人影响孩子呢？那简直是家庭啊、小朋友啊，就是他同龄的朋友啊，是学校啊，因为他从 K 到12有很多学校嘛，一般大概要上学要16到20年，对不对？然后是 society 就整个社会生下来，那我就把它做成一个比例，对吧？是家庭乘以多少比例呢？和学校的影响乘以多少比例，成为这一个人的他 nurture 他的一个办法，或者是就是整个影响他的办法。那你们就想，在年纪增加的时候，你们认为家庭的影响是增加呢还是减少呢？ So when the age increases, how are these 4 ABCD going to change? Family, school, peer, and society. For family, it's going to reduce. What about school then? So yeah, most likely family is going to reduce over the ages, but it might be different too. We'll see. What about school? I would say before they went to school, of course, from 0 to 5, they may be more and more influenced by school. And eventually they'll decrease, because we're out of school. For the peer, it's going to keep on increasing, I think, right? Like Adam said. And for society, it's probably still going to increase also. Right, guys? So we'll look at each one individually. Family. This is a very famous quote by Mark Twain. I usually have one of the kids read it, but now that I'm stuck in this virtual lecture, I'll just read it. Mark Twain said, "When I was 14, my father was so ignorant, I could hardly stand to have him around. But when I was 21, I was astonished at how much the old man had learned in 7 years." 所以中文就是说，马克吐温说啊，我这个14岁的时候，我看我老爹简直是太愚昧了，他什么也不懂，我根本就受不了，他就在我周围晃。但是到我21岁的时候，我觉得哇，我爸爸怎么学了，在7年之内学了这么多知识啊，长进了这么多。So, of course, this statement didn't mean that my father actually learned a lot from I was 14 to 21. It simply meant I learned a lot to appreciate my father at 21 at a very different level. So as you can see, I put a monotonically decreasing curve to represent family's influence, right? But in fact, maybe it's not all going to be like that. Sometimes, especially when they're born, they really worship us, don't they? When they're 5, they're like, my mom is the greatest. My dad is the best. And then when they get to 14 and 15, they probably have the worst image of us. They look down at us. But when they get older, they start to appreciate us more. So hopefully, we'll all get here somehow. And as we get older, maybe it will diminish again. So I was reminded of one of the often parents asking me about teenage children, how to deal with them. So you want to think about it, that you happen to be in this valley of the influence. And then hopefully, maybe if some parents are lucky, you could even be slightly increasing over the time and reach a plateau that they may not still hold you as their God when they were 5, but at least they have a more realistic view of you. So what happens to school? School, of course, when I don't talk about peer, I mean the teachers and the mentors, right? In the old days, did I use Chinese? Yeah. 所以这个就是说，在那个 teenage 时候，我们很多情况下，我们会觉得他们可能对我们的感觉最差了，所以他们在5、6岁的时候非常崇拜我们，但是到10几岁，简直是对我们恨之入骨，有的时候，或者是觉得我们的所有的主意都是过时的。但也许他们后来他们自己会成熟，以至于对我们有更公正的判断。所以呢，就有点像这个图，也可能希望他们在以后可能会增加对我们对他的影响，希望这样吧。So in terms of school, we're looking at mentors and teachers. And in the old days, of course, we have a lot of apprenticeship style. And that's our 师父, for example. So it's our mentor, more than the teacher in classrooms, but they're really the same. What do we want from them? I always look for the very first thing is caring. They need to be very caring for your kids a lot. They need to really want to love them. And another one is knowledge. They need to have the certain amount of knowledge that's important to pass down to you. Otherwise, they won't be able to make you respect them. So their influence to us may be like this bell curve. They are going to increase as they're with us, and then gradually they decrease. So I often tell my children, my own children, that you really want to appreciate the teacher when you are with them, because they will never be with you forever. They will be appearing in your life for a very short period of time. But if you truly learn from them, then their influence to you is going to be long-lasting. I see my grandfather and grandmother always having this kind of influence on their students. So after 80 years of 60 years, their students still remember the things that they did with the kids. And they will tell me all the things that they have learned from them. So 我用中文讲一下那个老师嘛，在学校里，在以前在没有那个大学或者中学的时候，也就是100多年以前，很多人都是就是跟着师傅学徒的，这是一样的。其实我们只是叫他叫 mentor 或者叫师傅。那其实师傅第一个是要有爱心，第二个呢，他就有知识，才能够在你专门的一个地方教你学习。所以经常师傅或者老师对我们的影响是有点像这 curve， 一开始是增加的，后来慢慢的就减少了。因为我都跟小朋友说，尤其我自己的孩子，他不可能一个老师一直跟着你一辈子，对不对？所以你在老师的 教你的时候，你需要珍惜老师和你在一起的这段时间，因为这就很快就过去了。所以我就想到我自己的祖父母在教育他们数学的学生的时候，有很多很多的对孩子的影响。就70-80年以后，那些学生还会告诉我他们是什么样的人，所以让我非常的感动，也让我觉得实际上 mentor 和老师和师傅就有这么重要的功能。So what about society then? 1,000 years ago, there already were books, right? The Chinese invented the block printing, and then there's also talk. So we are able to pass down knowledge just like I'm doing today. 100 years ago, we have what? Maybe talk. We have books. We already have radio. So we have the auditory input also. Now we have what? We have talking, books, radio, newspaper. We have movies. We have the computer interactive. So you can see that the society is creating many, many more tools as influencing each other. One of you said YouTuber, which is a very big influence on kids because of the easiness that we're able to pass down the videos, right? So one of the parents asked me before the meeting, how do you get kids to read more books? They feel like it may not be going to the books, huh? So maybe you want to read a book or not read a book. It may have to do with what is the alternative. Do you want to think about what's the difference between book and TV? So we'll leave this question and let you think about why we do or why we don't read a book. So it looks like the society's influence on us is monotonously increasing. 就是说社会对我们的影响是一直在增加的。所以呢，小朋友的影响呢，尤其是同龄人的影响，尤其的不可忽视。所以这个地方我们要考虑 in here we want to talk about peers in having them being competitive or having them being sharing. So who's your competitor right now? Maybe it's in the classroom, it's classmates, schoolmate. So who's your competitor in life? Is it still your classmates or your schoolmates? No. It looks like you're competing with the world, right, guys, once you get older. So who's your collaborator then? So it became the people who are your age, who you actually know when you're young. So it turns out to be that the relationship between you and your peers are changing. That also reflects how you treat each other. So I would encourage you to choose peers that are caring and generous and intelligent, and especially complementing your talent. 也就是说，在小的时候和你感觉你的同龄的小朋友就好像在跟你竞争，比如说学校里谁得第一啊，或者高考谁考得最好啊，进 Stanford 进 Harvard 谁进得最好。那 that's all 呢，这个只是表面的，因为你一旦进入社会，你就在和社会上所有的人竞争资源或者竞争位置。那其实你以前的 competitor 就变成了你的 collaborator， 所以就是说一定要强调这个 competition versus sharing 的这个两个的关系。所以我有的时候看见家长就在短期内非常强调you know how to be number one， 怎么在学校里变成第一名，但这个其实是很次要的，因为这些人其实并不是你的竞争对手。So the peers influence may be not monotonically increasing. Yeah, that's a problem. Sometimes for some parents, 就是有的时候你的朋友对你的影响反而是在很快的增加，很多家长就担心会有怎么样使得他们没有受到非常不好的 influence， 对不对？是不好的影响。这个呢又要回到刚才的讲的知识。So from their knowledge, they may be able to, how do we teach them to have their own ability to differentiate how to do things and what to do. So where does education take place? I was going to talk about where and when. So many of you would think it's classroom, right? But look at the time that the kids spend in the classroom. If you have 7 hours, probably 8 to the max, you only have, at least in California, 180 days in school. And you go to school for 12 years or to the max 20 even for me. So that's only 1.7 years if you multiply everything. So that's only 2% of your total living time and 3% of total waking time. With the COVID, you can see all the kids stuck at home. It's going to be decreased by a huge amount, probably just around a year. So where other places can you learn? Of course, many of you know in school, they have non-instructional time. In the playground or the lunchtime or after school, they have a lot of activity with their peers. They learn at home. Really, they spend the majority of the time at home. That's why it's so important for the parents to realize education, most of the time spent at home. It's not at school. And the last, of course, the world, where when you are able to bring the world to you, especially given the information feed from everywhere. 所以就是说，我们大家都认为学校里是教育的最好的地方。可是你看学校里的时间，我们花的一共1年180天吧，在 California 的学校里，乘以你12年和一天的7个小时，一共也就才一两年的时间在学校里。主要的时间呢，仍然是在家里。尤其现在有 COVID， 那整个在家里的时间就是非常非常多，所以我们仍然是最重要的对它的影响之一。